Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we're going to continue what we have been talking about the previous months and the previous times. I'm excited, inshallah, I'm excited to continue within that topic. Inshallah, we were talking about الترف. And we talked a lot about الترف, and we defined الترف as living in luxury and the type of luxury. We talked about taraf in our eating. We talked about taraf in our transportation, at least some of it. We talked about taraf in our lifestyle. We talked about taraf and how that type of luxury affects our hearts or affects even our relationship with the dunya because we want more of dunya. We talked about how taraf affects our himma, our enthusiasm for our relationship or to enhance our relationship with the akhirah. We were talking about taraf in from different angles, and we said that we were working on a book by Muhammad Musa الشريف, and it was, let's go back to it really quick. So this is what page? This is page 82 right there. And we were actually continuing explaining this book right there by Muhammad ibn Musa Sharif. It's called At-Taraf وأثره في الدعاة والصالحين. الترف, luxury, and its impact on the dua, those that are active in da'wah, and even the salihin, the pious Muslims. So we were continuing to speak about الترف. We talked about it from different angles. So inshallah, we will continue today. And we did actually speak about, we did leave off at speaking about taraf and the impact of food in in on a person, on a mu'min's heart. And we talked about how in Islam, of course, the Prophet ﷺ was encouraging us to do a lot of siyam in order to get us on the track of relating ourselves with Iman, relating ourselves with giving up on many of the different things that our body or even ourselves or our desires might need in order to connect us with al-akhirah. So we talked some of the things about that. We talked about how the Prophet ﷺ was doing a lot of siyam, whether it's the obligatory siyam or whether it's the nafil siyam. And of course, obligatory siyam would actually be siyam Ramadan or siyam al-nadhr or the oath siyam, or even siyam al-nadhr on behalf of al-yamin as well, on the behalf of oath as well. And we talked about siyam al-nafil, which are the different types of siyam, whether we were talking about siyam Ayyam al-Bid, the white days, which are the nights when the moon is actually a full moon, which is the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every lunar month, and they're called the white days. We talked about some of the different nafil siyam, whether that's Yawm Arafah or whether that's Mondays and Thursdays, and also other fasting like Siyam Shawwal. So when we speak about the spirituality of it, it's really all about connecting us with al-akhirah. So we're trying to train ourselves by giving up on dunya related items, whether that's training to give up on eating, or whether giving up on drinking, or even giving up on many different things in our life in order to connect us with al-akhirah. And of course, the Sahaba were taking the Prophet ﷺ as the example, on how to give up on dunya, even if that is a necessary element for your existence or for your survival, which is eating and drinking. And there is a very important connection between siyam and piety, al-wara'. Now, the wara' is not very often talked about, um, in our lectures. I guess sometimes we just feel that this is too utopian, and not many people are necessarily ready for the level of al-wara'. So we'll talk about it right now, some of the things that relate to al-wara'. What is al-wara'? Al-wara' actually means fear, but this is not the fear in where you're talking about the natural fear from different dangers, fear from natural disasters or so forth. But this is actually talking about the type of fear where you're fearing to do what is haram because you understand the punishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has as a consequence for you engaging in that haram thing. And the same thing, if you don't do a particular obligation, you would fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might uh, punish you in the dunya or in the akhirah. So you fear the consequence. That's al wara. But there is a correlation between al wara and how we relate with the different things that surround us in our dunya. So when we're looking at whether it's eating, drinking, or even living uh, a type of a luxurious lifestyle, it basically takes away the wara because the more the more money and the more luxury you intake, the more that you would consider yourself entitled and feel that everything is actually in a secure place, and you would then reconcile and consider yourself that you are living in that security, in that safety, and therefore leave the akhirah and leave Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because to you everything is secure. To you everything will be in this place where you're getting the focus on the luxury and not necessarily remembering that you have to be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fear of all those consequences, that all of these things might actually be taken away from you. Well, when you connect that with al-wara, it's an issue of feeling that entitlement. And I think with that, our newer generation, especially, we talked about that last time, getting all the different luxury when you're giving your children everything, or even you yourself sustaining everything. It's just constantly working on making your life, at least your dunya, sustained in all the different angles without you recognizing you're taking you're making your focus be just on maintaining your dunya and not maintaining your akhirah. So does that mean I should leave myself feeling insecure? No, we're not saying leave yourself feeling insecure. We're basically looking at taking out a lot of these luxuries in order for you to maintain the minimum, in order for you to focus on your akhirah. In other words, giving up on your dunya for the sake of wara. So giving up on a lot of the different luxuries that you might be spending on in order to spend it for akhirah, to spend it whether it's in donation or whether it's in probably for a better cause than spending it on probably a spacious home or more things to buy, because without us recognizing, we would just end up using this money just for the sake of building our dunya at the expense of our akhirah. Without us recognizing, we'll just be piling up more of dunya, whether it's a mansion here or whether it's a car there and 3 cars and 4 cars and even more luxurious cars, and upgrade our phones and upgrade our needs in dunya without us recognizing that we are wasting our energy on just spending for the sake of our dunya. And that starts taking away our wara, because we would be concerned about maintaining our homes, maintaining our dunya, maintaining our cars, maintaining the world around us, and then forgetting that, hey, you forgot the akhirah right there. And that starts connecting your heart in where your wara, your fear, is making sure that those things are not lost from your life. where you're just constantly working on making sure that you're not losing whatever you had worked hard to get in this dunya, whether it's a car, whether it's a home, whether it's the spacious area or whatever it is. You're just constantly just working and putting your effort and your energy in maintaining what you had worked to get, which is this dunya. So that takes your wara, your fear, your concern to be for the matters on dunya. And then your wara, you as a human being, you could only focus on one matter. If your focus is just on these different dunya matters, then without you recognizing, your akhirah is going to be a side thing. It's going to be a marginalized thing in your life where sometimes you would probably take it in consideration. And this is extremely important to talk about, because when we speak about spirituality, spirituality involves hope, involves fear, so الخوف and the raja. It involves hope and it involves fear. That's what spirituality is all about. When we're talking about hope, in where you've got your hope not in dunya but in akhirah. You've got the fear where you're not fearing for your dunya, but you're fearing for the akhirah. So when we speak about al-wara, it's actually making that hope and fear, rather than focused on dunya, to be actually be focused on akhirah. So you're redirecting your hope and your fear to be in for the akhirah and not for the dunya. That's what wara really is. So when we expand our luxury without us recognizing, our hope is to probably get an upgrade in our home, upgrade in our cars, upgrade in our lifestyle, upgrade in maintaining our home, as goes on, or even fear. We're fearful for the things that we had probably gathered and worked hard to gather, that we might actually lose them. So we constantly work on different ways to maintain, different ways to secure, different ways to upgrade, etc. And then we start letting our focus be on that hope and fear in that dunya, and then we would little by little start forgetting the akhirah. It becomes, oh, just a side thing. Sometimes I would think about the akhirah. I might actually think about the akhirah here and there, maybe on Jum'ah, or maybe during Ramadan, an hour, or a couple minutes, a couple hours, etc. And then it becomes a forgetful thing. For dua and salihin, this is not a utopian thing. For dua and salihin, they're constantly in that consciousness, that they're conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where that is al-wara. They're constantly living the hope for al-akhirah, constantly living in fear for al-akhirah. They're constantly living that minute, because dunya is to them not their focus. Dunya to them is just the bridge to the akhirah. Now, that's why when you see a lot of times the impact of living that luxury, and where people are procrastinating doing their chores. Why? Because they have gotten themselves so used to and so much connected with entertainment, that they want everything to just bring them happiness in dunya, that any job, any task that you would give them, they will constantly procrastinate completing that task, because they're finding that as a burden. And you could see this even in our children right now. Whenever you would ask them to do a task, if you're constantly giving them lots of luxuries and lots of taraf, what they will start feeling is that any task that you would give them, it becomes a burden to them. It becomes, they're constantly procrastinating doing that job and that task and completing it, because they have been so used to that everything is supposed to be entertaining, that even if it's a small task, like get the groceries out of the car, that they'll feel it's like they'll procrastinate. Oh, I'm bored, I'm tired, I can't move, it's what. And then it becomes such a burden to do just a simple task: wash the dishes, put the laundry, etc. It becomes becomes like as if you are giving them the biggest task on earth. Why? Because they have been feeling so entitled, they have been living in such luxury that the smallest task to them is like carrying the whole mountain. And that's really important to keep in mind, that when you actually want to think of that luxury, you also want to put it within a lot of different areas within your life, whether we're talking about parenting, whether we're talking about yourself, whether we're talking about your salah. Same thing with salah, that it becomes such a burden. I can't even get up for qiyam al-layl. I can't even get up for my prayer because I'm feeling that it's just a burden. Why? Because that person is consuming too much of luxury, that they're constantly feeling that they're supposed to be living that ease, that comfort. Luxury brings in comfort. The more comfortable you are, the less you're capable of doing a lot of different tasks, whether this is a spiritual task, whether it's a social task, whether it's a task that you have to do. What I mean by a social task, maybe visiting your family, maybe helping your mother, maybe helping your father, maybe helping helping yourself. Even you start feeling that it's too much to work on, it's just a burden, so you start procrastinating doing your things. Procrastinating, let's do hifl, oh it's too heavy, go to a class, I can't, it's too boring, etc., or do a particular task, and it becomes such a heavy task for them because they have been enjoying too much and putting themselves in too much comfort, which is what luxury is all about. Luxury is all about comfort. Luxury is all about security. Luxury is all about giving more and more hope. So you start living that entitlement of comfort and luxury and all of that lifestyle, that whenever there is a task, then it becomes something that you would want to procrastinate in. And of course, comfort brings in sleep. And that's why the dua and the salihin, what I mean by dua is basically those are active in da'wah. So this is probably not everybody and where they're probably at, but this is for those that are seeking to be at a higher level of deen and not the minimum. All right, we're seeking to get on a higher level of deen, which is to be like the salihin, which is to be like the mu'mineen, which is to be like the dua, like the Prophet ﷺ, and how he wanted to train the Sahaba. So this is really for a class for all of us, including myself. We all have to work towards that. In where when we speak about comfort and we're speaking about luxury, that actually brings in more of wanting more sleep, and then without us recognizing, you will be just seeking more and more comfort, where it's an upgraded bed, upgraded pillow, upgraded desires of wanting to make it as comfortable, your lifestyle as comfortable as you can. And you could see that the type of thinking and thinking that you have to eat, you not eat, but you have to sleep 8 hours a day is becoming a very common practice, a very common culture, and where, oh, you have to eat, sleep 8 hours a day. there's no there's no question that sleep differs, and the need for sleep differs from one person to another, or probably the way that people put their sleep hours differs from one environment or probably one area. And of course, we know sleep patterns differs from one age to another, or probably the different jobs that people might do. And we definitely recognize that, there's no question about it. So we can't necessarily put all the people on one pattern, because they've got different circumstances, and it's not the same for every single person. Every person has a different type of body, and therefore different types of needs. We're not necessarily saying don't sleep 8 hours, but we're basically talking about that assumption that everybody needs 8 hours of sleep is a place of question in Islam, because it's not necessarily 8 hours. And we saw that the Salihin were working towards making less sleep, reducing comfort, in order to let our hope and fear be for the akhirah and not for the dunya. And that's the same thing when we talked about the Sayyidah Fatima last time, how when she was asking the Prophet ﷺ for more comfort by asking Prophet ﷺ to get a maid for her, that's when the Prophet ﷺ comes to teach us, Sayyidah Fatima, well, there's something else that you have to learn. It's not getting more comfort. He could have just gotten her a maid and end with the story. But he wanted to teach his daughter a lesson because, as the daughter of a prophet, he wanted to teach her that there's something that you need to upgrade in, which is upgrade in your Iman and not upgrade in your dunya. He was giving the maids, whenever they're available, giving the maids to the other people. But as a daughter of the prophet, you had to live at an upgrade level of Iman and not upgraded level of dunya. Which is why when she had asked for a maid, the Prophet ﷺ told her, let me teach you on something that is better for you than a maid. And he said, whenever you would come to your sleep, whenever you attempt to sleep, then you would make Allahu Akbar 34 times, and then you would do Subhanallah 33 times, and you would say Alhamdulillah 33 times, and that is better for you than a servant or a maid. What was the Prophet ﷺ trying to do? The Prophet ﷺ was shifting her, and when you look at the tasbih and the dhikr that was done, or that was asked that they would do, and she would do, the dhikr involves where you're doing Allahu Akbar, you're doing Subhanallah. What is Allahu Akbar? You're redirecting your focus that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest thing, that your most important concern is not the dunya comfort, but your most important concern is the akhirah, is really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you do Subhanallah, how is that redirecting your vision? That's redirecting your vision where you would remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's nothing like unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in where, yes, the energy might be a certain investment that you would that you would incorporate in your life, but there's no better investment than the barakah, or the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will regenerate and generate within your energy. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as while you're saying subhanallah, you're redirecting your vision from considering your power to being what you invest in and what you incorporate in whatever task you're doing, to recognizing that the true power is really in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to put the blessings, to put more power to help you complete your task. When you say Alhamdulillah, it's redirecting your vision from looking at needing more of an upgrade to being satisfied with what you have. So you're redirecting your vision from recognizing, one, what you are going for, in other words, the mission. Two, you're redirecting your vision from looking at your energy to seeing that the true energy is really by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Three, you're redirecting your vision from seeing yourself that you're missing out on certain things, to seeing that you are satisfied with what you have. So instead of feeling that you're missing out on something, you're redirecting your vision that I have what I need. From feeling that my energy is not enough and I'm weak to do something, to seeing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be the one to give you the energy. From feeling that I've got a mission that cannot complete in this dunya, to remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your goal. So even if you've got shortcomings, remember, do what you can, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the vision, is the mission, is the one that will give you the satisfaction. In other words, it's redirecting your vision from seeing, I can't accomplish, I can't get to what I need to get to, I am short on every task, and I'm short in completing everything. No, it's take it easy, just do the dhikr, redirect your focus, and remember that as long as you are getting the reward for the akhirah, even if you're short on dunya, it's the akhirah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the reward for. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells you, فَسَيَرَى اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing your actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing what you're doing. So even if you've got shortcomings, you couldn't do the best in your house, you couldn't do the best with your children, you couldn't do the best in completing every single task. You've got your shortcomings. Remember, you're going to have certain things. Do your effort, put as much as you can, invest whatever you can, because this is just a bridge to the akhirah. You'll have your shortcomings, and that's why just be satisfied with whatever energy you were capable of putting in, with whatever you're able to invest, and be satisfied with what you have, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is your mission. The akhirah is your mission. Even if you couldn't complete your tasks in dunya, that's more important, which is redirecting your focus for the akhirah. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani comments on this hadith. Who's Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani? Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, I think we talked about him before, but doesn't hurt to talk about him again. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he basically did Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. So he basically explained Sahih al-Bukhari in approximately 20 volumes. It's a huge book. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, his father died when he was a young boy, when his mother even died when he was he was just almost 2 years old, so a toddler. The one to take care of him was his sister. His sister, Sitt al-Rakb, was his first teacher. His sister was approximately 13 years old. She took over in teaching him after the death of his father, who was a stone cutter. His father, that's why he was called Ibn Hajar, because his father was a stone cutter and also a scholar. But of course, when he had died, his sister was really the main caretaker, and later his friend took over in taking care of him. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, later we might think, well, he was just he had, his father and mother die, that's the end of his calamities. Well, think again. He actually had 10 children, and all of those 10 children, they were dying in their early childhood. Who knows what type of disease they were going through, but every single child would die at an age, couple months, a year, less, etc., a little bit more. The longest that any child of his children lived was 10 years old. So he wanted not to celebrate a birthday per se, but it was like a moment of joy. But then the second day his son dies, 10 kids died for him, but he didn't let those calamities break him, because for a believer, a trauma and the way they relate with trauma is different than a disbeliever. A disbeliever feels that once their dunya is going into some shortages, they would feel that it's the end of their dunya because they depend on dunya. But for a mu'min, they recognize that dunya is not their place of focus. They recognize that dunya is a bridge to the akhirah. They recognize that dunya is temporary. And that's why whenever something happens in their dunya, whether it's the loss of a mother, father, a loss of anything in dunya, they recognize that inna ma'al usri yusra, for every single calamity that happens in their life, they recognize that there's a law that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in this world. And that is, whenever a calamity would happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring two eases, not one. And they recognize that this dunya is just a bridge to the akhirah, and that whenever, hatta shawka yushakuha, even if it's a thorn that pricks a believer, they recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would compensate them for every single pain that they would endure. They recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created dunya, and that there's a level of stability, and where there's part of that stability is justice, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not let you live in suffering all your life. And that even if you are suffering, the Lord Almighty will give you some type of authority, compensation, some type of other powers that you may recognize and may not recognize. But that's because the Lord Almighty would not leave you suffering all your life, because the Lord Almighty is all just. So Ibn Hajar al Asqalani didn't let the traumas take over, whether the death of his parents or the death of 10 of his children, but instead, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensated him with ilm that he was using in order to invest after even his death. This ilm would be remembered throughout. It's like, yes, your children died, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let your remembrance be even after centuries, after your death. And right now we're talking about almost 700 years after Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani's death. We still would remember Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani every time we would remember Sahih al-Bukhari, and certainly every time we would want to remember al hadith. Ibn Hajar al Asqalani, he said, well, this hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was reminding Sayyidah Fatima to do the dhikr before her sleep as an alternate to wanting a maid and to getting a maid, he said, well, basically, every time she does this dhikr while she's attempting or wanting to go to sleep, it basically brings in no ihya. What is ihya? In other words, it basically gives her the power to get energized and to give her the power to be able to be healthy in order to get stronger to complete her task. Because the Sayyidah Fatima was basically complaining of being so tired to complete the task, and that the tasks that she was trying to complete were more than what she can handle, etc. So here, the Prophet ﷺ was basically teaching her to redirect her focus from one end to another end, from dunya to akhirah, from feeling that everything is not working right to being satisfied with whatever investment she was capable of doing. Whatever it is, that's what you could do, that's absolutely fine. Let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you with the rest. Focus on your akhirah. Now, when we're speaking about sleep, it's important to remember that for the believer, there's qiyam al-layl is actually a very important thing. Why? Because qiyam al-layl is taking away some of your sleep in order to get you to getting used to less sleep and being able to complete more tasks. But we're not talking about tasks for dunya only, but we're also talking about getting your body used to less comfort in order to get it stronger in being used to more and more energy. In other words, it's basically training your body from getting more done, whether it's for qiyam al-layl or whether it's doing more work and more tasks, to be basically more powerful, to get you stronger by getting you into that regimen of doing more by getting less comfort. So it's exactly like when you would do workout. The workout, yeah, gets you more tired, but getting you more tired is building up more muscles. It's getting you stronger. It's getting you stronger by getting you more tired. And that's the same thing. It's working in that way, in where, yes, you're reducing from your sleep, you're reducing from the comfort until your body gets used to this new regimen, this new type of ability. In the beginning, it's going to be that you're like going to work and you can't even open your eyes, all of that. But then once your body gets into that training, it will grow stronger in being able to do what it needs to do. And it's really strange how the Salihin, they had a lot of really, I would say, strange stories in how they would kick away sleep and try to take away their sleep, um, whether it's waking up early, in where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, Allahumma barik li ummati fi bukuriha. The Prophet ﷺ had made the dua, Ya Allah, bless my ummah, bless the nation with when they would wake up early. So waking up early, which is Fajr time, and staying up late and taking up some naps, using sometimes 4 nap is in order to help you continue staying awake throughout the day to being productive. So waking up early is actually the sunnah, and sleeping all the time throughout the day is not the sunnah, or even waking up at night and sleeping during the day is not the sunnah. The sunnah is to wake up early. And this is really interesting because, when you look at the ayat in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. الليل is libas. What is libas? Libas actually means a garment. Yes, a garment, this is a literal word. The word الليل libasa was not intended for literally uh, a moment of dressing up, but this is actually to mean that الليل libasa, it's a time of satr. It's a metaphor. It's a time for covering. It's a time for preserving your place, preserving your modesty. It's a time where, it's time for, preserving your corner. In other words, reduce from visiting people at night, and you also reduce from bringing people over at night, because where it's a time for modesty. It's your own time. It's seclusion. It's a time of seclusion. It's a time of reservation. It's a time for privacy. It's a time for modesty. And it's also a time in libasa, in where you're reducing your social interactions at night. It's a time where you would be secluded on your own. You're trying to invest that time as for yourself. النهار معاشة. In المعاش, yes, المعاش actually means to do and engage in business, to engage in some form of life and engagement in different corners, whether it's in social interaction or whether it's in seeking business or seeking a job, etc. That's to bring in il-ma'ash. Now, this is extremely important, that you want to engage in business, you do that in during the day to help you do that social interaction that's during the day, but living and flipping the night to make it a day and the day to make it a night is a very dangerous thing on your body. Not healthy for your body, not healthy, especially for your children. So, learning how to wake up early and sleep during the night is actually healthier to keep you stronger for your akhirah, stronger for your dunya, healthier for your dunya, and even better for your akhirah. So, living in that regimen in where you're Allahumma barik li ummati fi bikuriha, there's barakah, there's more energy. There's more power in waking up early. There's more energy. There is more investment to be done, and you will be capable of completing more tasks when you actually wake up early in the morning and stay awake. Now, some of the different examples of how Salihin were waking up at night and how they were fighting off sleep is really rather interesting. So here's Al-Fudayl ibn Ghazwan. Fudayl Ghazwan, he basically was known, he died at 140-year Hijrah, and he was actually known to being a person that is thiqa. What is thiqa? Thiqa, a trustworthy. In other words, it's another word for a salih person. And he said, كنا نجلس أنا ومغيرة. Said, me and Mughira, and of course he also was a thiqa, he was also a hadith narrator. He said we would sit me and or Mughira and I and a number of different people, and we would throughout the night نتذاكر الفقه فربما لم نقم حتى نسمع النداء بصلاة الفجر. He said we would sit throughout the night. So I thought they were supposed to sleep during the night, but this is doing something else during the night. This is not waking up throughout the night to play games, to talk, to watch movies, to do any of that, because watching movies and all of that is getting you more into dunya. But this is actually doing the sake, it's another form of qiyam layl. They would stay up during the night. نتذاكر الفقه. They would review the fiqh. They would review fiqh is basically the science in Islamic law. So they would review the fiqh studies throughout the night. It was a number of different guys that would sit together, review and restudy their fiqh. And he said, we would do that until we would hear the adhan for Fajr. So they would pray Fajr and then take a moment to sleep. Now, that's extremely important to keep in mind. You might say, well, wait a minute. So now they're sleeping at Fajr. In other words, they actually shifted their nighttime rather than actually do it the other way around. So when you're looking at living that moment to do Qiyam al-Layl, and that's why when you would look at, for example, it depends on what you're really doing. You're looking at, for example, other scholars that they would have more energy and more work to study at night rather than in the daytime. So there isn't a specific sleep regimen that the Salihin would necessarily do. And that's why whenever they had the energy to study, they would study. If it's at night, they would study at night and probably take more sleeps during the day. And if they were capable of actually doing the opposite and doing their studying during the day, that's when they would actually study during the day. So you could see that some Salihin, they basically did more of their studies during the night, just like Imam Malik. Let's look at Imam Malik. He said in Imam Malik, he would pray Fajr and then with the wudu that he had made for Isha for almost 50 years. And of course, this is really rare and this is really odd. Ibn Hazm, now mind you, Ibn Hazm, he absolutely hated such a comment, and he said that this is impossible to do. He wasn't. Of course, Ibn Hazm, he had a lot of odds with a lot of the different scholars, and he said this is impossible to do. He didn't need to use the bathroom. He didn't need to be with his wife. So why would he actually stay for 50 years doing his Salat al-Fajr with the wudu of Salat al-Isha? He didn't need to use the bathroom. He didn't let gas out, etc. So this is actually speaking about not necessarily maintaining wudu just to maintain wudu, but this is to show that he was with this on the same duty. It was really speaking about it from that sense, not that, oh, he didn't pass gas between Isha and Fajr, he didn't need to use the bathroom, he didn't need to be with his wife. This is talking about it as it's a form of expression. It's a form of expression that he was staying up all night from the time of Isha till Fajr, working on studying and doing a lot of engagement for the Akhirah. This is to express it that way. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, just an idea. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani was one of the main scholars of the Hanafi madhab. All right. And without Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, we would not actually know the Hanafi madhab. It's really strange. I would say Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, a major scholar, wasn't really given the appreciation and the recognition that he really deserves, even for the Hanafi madhab. I think, it's very important to consider Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani even more than Abu Hanifa himself, because without Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani, we would really know absolutely nothing, probably about the Hanafi madhab. All the the appreciation, all the gratitude really goes from Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. He was the person that was considered as the main student to revive and to record and even document Abu Hanifa's knowledge. And without Muhammad Hassan al-Shaybani, we would absolutely probably know nothing but al-fiqh al-akbar for Abu Hanifa. Al-fiqh al-akbar, it's I would say almost a 150-page book in Aqidah. I know it actually seems like it's a book on fiqh, but it's not a book on fiqh. Al-fiqh al-akbar, which actually literally means the big fiqh or the great fiqh, but in the word fiqh actually means Islamic law, but that book has nothing to do with fiqh. It's actually a book of aqidah, of Islamic creed, completely of Islamic creed, has nothing to do with fiqh. And that was really probably the only book that Abu Hanifa had written. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani was the person that revived all the ilm for the Hanafi madhab. And even when Shafi'i went from, well, he was actually taken, Shafi'i was taken um, from uh, from Medina and literally shackled and handcuffed, legs and hands. And then he was taken from Medina to Yemen. And then when he went to Yemen, he was taken in handcuffs and leg cuffed as well from Yemen when he was studying there all the way to Baghdad, because there were rumors that Shafi'i was trying to take over the Khilafah and trying to plot for a coup over the Khalifa. So he was taken all the way in handcuffs, all the way to Baghdad. Mind you, from Yemen, from Yemen all the way to Baghdad in handcuffs in plain desert. You're talking about, how many miles is that? That's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's almost 800 to 1,000 miles, maybe, or not, if not even more. If we're talking about Sana'a, all the way to Baghdad, somebody Google that for me. I'd like to know the distance between Sana'a and Baghdad. If we're talking about, the air distance, I don't know what path they were going to go from Sana'a in Yemen all the way to Baghdad. That's where the Khilafah was, in order to interrogate Shafi'i whether he was really attempting to make a coup or not. And then once he was interrogated, that's when the Khalifa had let him go and discovered that that was just a rumor. But then that's when Shafi'i decides, well, I'm here in Baghdad. Let me get myself, used to what is more important right there in Baghdad, and he meets with Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. And there he actually starts with his new madhab after being, with his madhab al-Qadim. And that's when he met with Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. Now, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, there's no way that you can become a faqih, you can be a scholar, if you don't put yourself at a regimen like the regimen of الصالحين. So let's see what he was doing. He كان قد جزأ الليل ثلاثة أجزاء. Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani split his night into three different groups, or three different timings. One of it was for sleep. The second was for prayer, to do qiyam al-layl, and the third was to do mudarasa, للدرس, in order for studying. So if we were to actually just do somewhat of trying to figure out, let's just assume that in, well, he was in Baghdad. Let's assume that Aysha would be around 8 p.m. Let's just, put put a number right there, hypothetically speaking. So if we were to put it third and third and third, okay, so from 8 p.m., let's just assume that it's 5 a.m. is Fajr. So 8 till 5, all right, 8 till 5, and then he would basically split. Okay, so the distance from Sana'a to Baghdad is 1,616 miles. Okay, that's a large distance, man. And in the heat, scorching heat, you're talking about a real desert. Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. inshallah. All right. And this is a scholar, and right there, being tortured and that type of torture. Okay. So now going back from Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. So if we're talking about 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. All right. So we were talking about he would probably sleep from 8 to probably got 1 a.m. And then at 1, probably wake up and then do from 1 until probably, well, no, he would have to wake up at 12:30 because if he's going to do a third, all right, so 12:30 until probably 2 a.m. for Salah Qiyam al-Layl, and then from 2 a.m. until 5 a.m. he would probably do a dars, or basically studying and reviewing his studies. This is just my little, it's amazing, really. This is, let's see, he was staying up a lot at night until he was asked, "Lima la tanam?" Why don't you sleep? And he said, how am I going to sleep when all the Muslims have been depending on us. All the Muslims are depending on us, and they would say, uh, whenever they would have any calamity or any issue that they need to solve, they would bring it to us for us to solve it. And he said, if we were to sleep, then we would just lose the deen. In other words, he was a leader. He felt that he needed to comfort the rest of the Muslims. He needed to make sure that all the Muslims' problems were being solved by studying fiqh. And he felt that if he was going to sleep, then the Muslim matters are not going to be solved. And he needed to be there to solve their problems. Let's say Al Bukhari is rather interesting. Al Bukhari had a warraq. Al warraq is basically the person to write and scribe for him. So that's what warraq means, scriber, the person that scribes. And il warraq was probably the most important person that il Bukhari would accompany with him, and even while he was traveling. So he would travel from al Bukhara to Maru, from Maru to Samarkand, etc., to just different areas. And he had the warraq, and of course the warraq would basically do the trying to make paper, trying to work on making his that they would write using feathers. So his duty was really just to make sure that his writing elements are there. It's not like today where you could just go to the stationery and go to the store and get all your pens or whatever, or even your keyboard, and you would type everything. No, he needed somebody to just keep his stationery always at hand. So somebody that Warraq was the person to do that. And he was the one to tell us how al-Bukhari was living his life and how he was making such writing, or how he was living in order to write and scribe Sahih al-Bukhari. So he said, يستيقظ في ليلة واحدة 15 مرة إلى 20 مرة. He explained that he was waking up in every night almost 15 to 20 times, and every single time he would wake up, he would light his lantern, and then he would sit on a hadith trying to maintain, probably writing a word, maybe remembering something, maybe trying to correct something that he had done. He said, and he was actually doing all of that and many, many, many times. And his friends would even see him doing that. Now, of course, here, this is not the quote of Al Warraq, but I know for a fact that Al Warraq was the one that was accompanying Bukhari and actually speaking about how his lifestyle was. And it's really interesting because Al Bukhari, waking up those numerous times. And of course, every time he would write a hadith, he would actually pray 2 rak'ahs before writing any hadith. He would pray 2 rak'ahs and then write the hadith. Pray 2 rak'ahs and memorize the hadith, and he would scribe that hadith. In Imam in Nawawi, Ya Allah, in Nawawi is a very interesting figure. He's Shafi'i madhab, originally from Syria, but he was even avoiding certain foods because certain foods would get him too sleepy. Avoid cucumbers, avoid watermelon in order to make sure that that doesn't get him. I'm not sure why these particular foods, but he was saying that he was recognizing um, in, in, in and recognizing that these foods were getting him sleepy. So he would avoid different foods in order to be able to stay up for طلب العلم. الإمام الذهبي would actually comment on in Nawawi. Now, remember that book, Riyadh al-Salihin? Riyadh al-Salihin is probably in every single masjid. Riyadh al-Salihin is really written by Nawawi, and in Nawawi compiled those ahadith, the most important ahadith. And al-Dhahabi, who was a very important figure, a lot like Siyar A'lam al-Nubala is almost in, let's see, Siyar A'lam al-Nubala is almost in 28 volumes. And الذهبي said وضرب به المثل في إكبابه على طلب العلم ليلا ونهارا وهجره النوم إلا عن غلبة وضبط أوقاته بلزوم الدرس أو الكتابة أو المطالعة أو التردد على الشيوخ. He said about النووي. Now, where did he actually say that? Let's see. Was that in سير أعلام النبلاء? No, he wrote it in صلاح الأمة. All right. So in الذهبي said about Nawawi, he said that Nawawi was actually one of the greatest examples in how he was very enthusiastic in seeking and throughout the night and throughout the day, and how he was avoiding sleep until sleep would really overcome him, and how he was really considerate in trying to stay on track with writing or with seeking and even seeking ilm and seek knowledge, or even going to the different scholars in order to seek the ilm. So this is just an idea of how there's no way that you could live your comfort all the way and just wanting to get 8 hours of sleep. And we know that even when some doctors would tell you that, yeah, you need to get 8 hours of sleep, there's no way that these doctors themselves actually get 8 hours of sleep. In fact, they're probably the least to get the best sleep. And there's no way that they could actually get there unless they had actually deprived themselves of a lot of sleep. And that's the same thing. We're not just talking about doctors, but same thing with طلب العلم. طلب العلم, you cannot get طلب العلم and get al-akhirah and your enthusiasm for akhirah when you're just always in search of more and more comfort. So this is just an idea. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the enthusiasm for talab al-ilm, grant us the enthusiasm to be able to live like those salihin, grant us the power, and grant us the himma to be able to replicate what these salihin were doing. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that will learn from them and have them be um, our, our inspiration. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that are capable of doing this. I know it's not easy at all. And I'm somebody that, you know, actually suffers from fibromyalgia, so sleep is probably a weakness for me, because subhanallah, it can cripple, and it just affects my ability. So I understand that it's not an easy thing for every single person, but something that we could probably learn from the salihin. It could be a struggle for some people, and probably it would be easier for them to invest in something else. Maybe maybe not the sleep portion, but we'll lay out different things and you will see what you're capable of doing. So if this area was a weakness to you, but you're capable of doing an investment elsewhere, well, we're just laying out the different types of salihin, the different capacities, and you see what you're capable of doing. Maybe you're capable of reducing some other things in your dunya, but not your sleep. Maybe you're capable of reducing food, but not your sleep. Maybe you're capable of doing reducing sleep, but not necessarily the food. So it differs from one person to another, and we're just laying out the different things to help us see what we should work on. So inshallah Rabbil Alameen give us different capacities and be able to get the inspiration and live like them. ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العلا والتقى, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us taqwa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us iman. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us steadfast. And barakallahu fikum. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, inshallah. No questions. Even if you wanted to go on the microphone, I believe, how do you do this? I think, yeah, there you go. You could actually raise your hand and you can actually go on the microphone. I guess this is it. Well, barakallahu fikum and Rabbi yahfadhku jami'an. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.